from wherever you are, and welcome to Let's Play Games. I'm John McFarland, Adult Services Librarian for National Public Libraries, and I hope you'll join me in learning or rediscovering some of the more common and uncommon games out there. This time, we're going to go into a game of organization. It only takes one deck, 2 players, but you're going to have to learn melds and sequences. More on why in just a second. Let's get stuck in. So, Rummy is a more basic game. Simply by knowing the card deck, you can know how to make it work. And a review of card decks, because I know we always want to make sure that we cover it. There are 4 suits in each deck. A heart, a diamond, a spade, and a club. And it goes in sequential order from ace representing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then what we call the court cards, a jack, a queen, and a king. And for aces, they can, in varying card decks, refer to either being the low card, being singular, or the high card at the end of king. For this instance, it's just going to function as the low card here, so it'll only represent 1. And we do have, as a part of any standard card deck, 2 joker cards, usually in a black and white or color form. We're not going to need that for this game, so we're going to put these off to the side. And one of the more important things is always shuffling. As you can see, this deck is partially shuffled, but if you haven't ever shuffled a card deck before, I want to make sure that that's done. So what you're going to do is you're going to split it into 2 halves, and you're going to hold it into this corner right here where my thumbs are, and then you're just going to slowly release a couple of cards at a time. And by doing this a couple times, it'll be shuffled. So that way you won't have to worry about it. But now what we're going to do is I am going to show 10 cards to each player face down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Place the rest in the middle. This will be the stock. And then place 1 card face up. So you're going to be looking for a couple of things here. You can, and you're typically going to hold these close to the vest. So I'm going to show you for demonstration purposes, but typically you will just hold these in your hand. You can fan them out a little, and you should have 10 cards in your hand. And what we have here, there's no cards that are wild, it's just the standard amount. Let's see, get these cards in order as well. So what you're going to be looking for are groups of 3, which are called melds. And these melds are going to be the same number or letter, depending on if it's court card. So I have 3 queens here. So this forms my first meld. What I'm going to try and do is, over the course of the game, come up with a group of melds or combinations that are runs. So this will be 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 7, ace, 2, 3, 4, etc. They have to be in the same suit though. So for example here, I've got 3 queens, so let me just put these off to the side for the moment. I've got 2 10s, so I'm hoping I get one of the other 10s over the course of the game. But nothing else seems to be in a suit. And I'll say this king is probably going to be pretty useless now that I have these queens over here. And especially because one of my queens is going to be a heart. But you're going to be working on improving your hand over the course of this round. Eventually, what you're going to have is a handful of sequences and melds, and being able to go out by discarding and having only melds and sequences and 10 fewer points. So you're going to ask me now, what are points? Well, right now I have what's referred to as dead wood, as they don't form any part of a meld or a sequence. So right now they're worth their point face values. So 10, 10, 8, 7, 5, 3. So we have a lot of dead wood in our hand right now. And a king, which is worth 10 points on its own. King, queen, jack are 10s. Ace is going to be worth 1. So what we need to do is, over the course of this game, remove our dead wood and also keep our melds and sequences together. So in order for play to pursue, the second player goes first since I was the dealer as player 1. I can either pick up this 4, which I'd be kind of inclined to do because I have a 2 and a 3 of spades there. If I do that, I can pick that up at any time. And then I have to discard something. So I'm going to discard, for the sake of conversation, this 5 right here. It isn't a part of any valid hand, so I at least have a sequence starting here. As player 1, I'm going to draw, and I draw an 8. So now you've got a decision to make. You can do a 7, 7, 8, try and build a sequence, or a king. Not knowing that, for example, that 4 is over there in the grand scheme of things. I'm going to go ahead, like I talked about previously, discard that king, of which now you can either pick up or draw. Let's say I draw. I get the 4. I don't need this 4 for anything in a sequence because I'm looking for either the ace or the 5. And then play sequentially continues. So we've got this 10 here, so I'm holding on to that in my hand. I'm thinking about what do I want to discard. So I'm probably going to discard this 5. It's right here. Especially if I know another 5's already been discarded, it makes it a little bit harder for me to want to make a meld off of this. So that is, at its core, what Rummy is. Building melds and building sequences. So let me take a step back and give you a little bit of history about this game. How did these two games end up becoming so similar, combined, and brought over to the United States? Well, that's simple. Rum. Even though rum was imported from India in certain contexts, it was brought over as an English game, becoming the game of rummy. It got its definition from actually odd or strange, indicating the way in which it was played. So it came over as a popular pastime game as you were going across the ocean, and took well into the 19th and 20th century to become a more respectable game. It was often known as a lower class game before becoming a higher class game into the mid 20th century. So welcome back. Now, player 1 just discarded that 5. It's now player 2's turn. They're not going to take that 5 unless they really think they're going to get that 6 of spades in order to make a sequence. So, interestingly enough, they're going to draw this, which allows for better sequencing, but they need now the 9 or the 6 and they're trying to recall, and they don't recall. You're technically allowed to look at the discard pile just in case. But from this point, now you have to figure out what you're going to discard. And I'm going to discard that 9, partially because it doesn't factor into any of my plans. If I can get another 8, it renders that 7 moot, and it's generally a safer play. So not wanting to take that 9, I could have done so, but if I already have my meld of 3 10s here, so then I've got my 9, not knowing what to particularly do, at least I'm going to go ahead and discard that 9, kind of rendering a certain moot. I could now pick up that 9 if I really wanted to. And if I'm player 2, I'd be kind of keen to do that just because now I've got some options. But now you've got to figure out what to discard. You don't know that this 10 is now unavailable because it's in the hand not being shown. Remember, this is all being held up. So you're hoping for a 10 that's never going to come. So let's see. Sorry, they picked up the 9. So they're going to discard this ace. Could pick up that ace they want, but they're not going to. Now they have a matched set, fully matched set, which means it makes your world a whole lot easier. So now you've got to figure out what you're going to go for. I'm going to go ahead and discard this 3 here. You're hoping for the 8s that are coming out of there. You're drawing a queen. But notice how in this instance, it really doesn't help. So you're going to figure out what you want to get rid of. Can't help in a sequence. So we'll go ahead and do the king here. And then draws a king. But it's the king of diamonds. So notice how your hand can just fluctuate over the course of time, where now all of a sudden the king becomes viable here, where you're going to pick this up and look for one of the other jacks. But now you've got to decide something to get rid of, because you have a whole lot of options, but not a whole lot of what's going to work. So let's say you decide to scrub that 8 here and see if maybe that jack can pan out. Now we have a significant problem if we're player 2. Player 1 has just gone Jin. Well, there's a little bit of help here. You can lay off your cards onto the matching set. You didn't know what was a part of it. And this reduces the amount of point hit that you're about to take. So you've got queens, 10s, and 8s, and you've got a queen in your hand, and an 8 in your hand. You're going to have to eat the rest of this, but you at least have a little bit of the reduction. So you get your player, we'll do A, B. A is the person who won, so they'll get 20 points. And then you'll get 7, 9, so 16, and then 10 points for each of these. So minus 46. Ouch. So that is, at its core, 1 round, Gin Rummy. And you go to 100 or 200, depending on what you got. A little more on all of this in a second. So we have to talk a little bit about the origin of this card game. It has a divided history depending on who you ask. There's 2 major theories. One, Conquian, which is a Mexican game derived from a Spanish deck, which only actually dealt with about 40 cards rather than the 52 card deck that we're familiar with in a French card deck. And it had its origin in the 1890s, and it pioneered the idea of bringing melds together. There's also Kanlu, which is an Asian version based off of Mahjong, which instead of using cards, are used in tiles, which I promise we'll get to eventually. But depending on who you ask, the core idea of melds still existed in both as it developed. So there's two more things that I want to talk about before we close this particular episode. We do have knocking. Knocking is a particular condition where this just got discarded. Let's use a better card as an example. Let's say 3 doesn't factor in anybody's hand. Where right now, player 2 basically almost has a complete Jin set. It would be kind of helpful if they had that extra ace that's been discarded, but let's say it didn't factor in. Same for player 1. They've got 6 points of what we call deadwood. Deadwood here is just the remaining amount in the hand. And you can do what's called knocking, saying I basically have a complete hand, and see what's left, counting your melds, and then getting rid of that last card, and it can point against what you have versus your other player. So basically what I'm saying here is that I am close to Jin, but I'm not there. But I don't want to lose all of the points that would be garnered by having nothing. If you reach all the way to the bottom, the last 2 cards, and no one has either knocked or gone Jin, no one wins any points for that round. So let's say maybe that the cards that I need, that last ace, is buried somewhere deep. We now know that it is. So what I can say is I am trying to knock, saying hands over. I'm going to place down my melds, and I have deadwood under the total count of 10. So if you have a face card, you can't be under 10 for deadwood. So this is having any amount lesser than that. Player 1 is also not at Jin, but is close enough to where it's a question of the difference left in the hands. So let's say, for the sake of conversation, I'm going to switch these, that they think their deadwood count is 2. Well, let's say that these aces are all that's left. Just switch it. But it's not enough to go fully out because they need that extra ace to have the full hand. Well, their deadwood is less than theirs, so you actually get an undercut. So instead of player 2 getting the 10 points for knocking, player 1 would get it minus their deadwood, which would be 1. So 9 points. So this game is played very much to a small point total. You're not counting a whole lot of differential, but you can have a perfectly good time just having small count off of these brief games that happen very quickly. And that's half the fun of this game. So, a little bit more about the history of this game, because we still have to go back to Kongkweon and Kanhu. Now, Kanhu is descended from Mahjong, the tile-based game as I referred to previously. However, the idea of drawing and discarding tiles, that is one of the clear borrowing of Rummy in the Mahjong world. Kongkweon had less of a discarding method, but more of a thievery-based method. So even though they have 2 slightly different origins, they started melding into a common theme. Well, how did it end up in the United States? More on that in a moment. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. Now, we're not done with this game just yet. Now that we've learned the basics of 2-player Rummy, I want to show you how you can add even more onto it, showing you how this family of games has numerous ways to play it, and with much higher scores. I'll see you next time.